So, a very warm welcome to everyone on the Hangout and also anybody that's watching this first ELF Campfire on the website. It's our first attempt at doing this, so we're really excited about it. We really hope it works out. We're planning to make these around the campfire meetings regular meetings from now on, and we think there'll be two types of meetings that we have. One will be, as we are today, talking about the National Health Service developments, showing you what we're doing, telling you about the website and our plans. And the other type of meeting that we're planning to have is it's going to be more around discussing research. So we've got lots of ideas about how that might work. Online evidence-based journal clubs, debates, presenting new research and new blogs, tackling controversial topics. Smoking bans in inpatient units is one that seems to be high on the agenda at the moment, for example. So we're going to have these regularly, and we'll have topics that cover the different ELVs that we have in the service. So over the next few weeks, we'll have mental health, learning disabilities, and social care campfires. So if you've got topics that you're interested in, if you've got things that we should be covering, then please do let us know. Tweet us at the ELF Campfire hashtag or email us directly. Okay, so this is the agenda. We're going to start off, just do a quick round the campfire introduction, so just to give everyone 20 seconds to introduce themselves, tell us who they are and where they work. And then I'm going to hand over to Douglas, and Douglas is going to give us a short presentation about the background to the National Health Service, why we started it in the first place, a bit about the history of our work at Minovation in Oxford, and then we're going to talk a bit about the ELVs that we're going to be adding to the website over the next few months. And then in the second half of the campfire, we're going to be doing a short demonstration of the new website. A lot of you I know have seen the website already and have used it as logged-in members, but I know a lot of people watching the broadcast won't have seen it yet. So we're going to show some of the new features and obviously give you an opportunity to ask questions about what we're doing with that. And then we're going to finish off again with another kind of round the campfire to give you an opportunity to share your thoughts on what we've done so far. Okay, so without any further ado, let me just turn that off so we can all see each other again. Hopefully that'll work.
With an infinity screen.
Yeah, it's like a Hawkwind video for a second, isn't it? So I think I know everyone now. So let's start. Chris, you've joined. I see. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. It took me a while.
No problem. So maybe I'll kind of suggest people, because we don't really know what order we're in. So I'll start introducing myself. I think most of you know I'm Managing Director of Minovation. We're the company behind the National Health Service. So I'm an information scientist. And myself and Douglas founded Minovation back in 2002. And before that, we worked at the university or the NHS. So we've been working in evidence-based healthcare for about 20 years. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been doing this ELF thing. And obviously, we're going to be talking about that. So, yeah, that's me. So, Douglas, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm also an information specialist. I live in Edinburgh, but most of my work is around ways in which we can get evidence into practice, ways in which we can improve how we communicate about evidence. That's really, like Andre, that's what I'm interested in.
Great, thank you. And Dochi is the third member of the Minovation team. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, this is me, Dochi. I have a social science background and I work as a project coordinator for the National Health Service with Doug and Andre.
Great, thank you. So I think I've got everybody in order. So Alex, do you want to start and tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm the manager for the Collaboration for Leadership in Applied Health Research and Care at Oxford that's funded by the NIHR. And we will be taking part in a project with Mental Health to do an evaluation.
Great, thank you. Chris?
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Sampson. I'm a health economist. I started writing for the Mental Health a while ago and have written a bit for some of the other ones. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Hi. Thank you.
Oh, University of Nottingham. I should give them a mention, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. Lee?
I'm currently working as a researcher, a systematic reviewer at the University of Warwick, and I'm still writing up a PhD at the University of East Anglia on learning disabilities and cognitive behavioural therapies.
Great, thank you. Lisa?
For North East London Foundation Trust, I'm the assistant librarian, and I've been writing for the mental health things now, yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Caroline?
I'm Caroline de Bruin. I'm Chief Blogger for Commissioning Health. I work currently for Public Health England and do this commissioning blog in my spare time because I've got real interest in health management, evidence-based practice, and research related to commissioning and QIP and all that goes with it.
Thanks, Caroline. And Raf, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Raphael Underwood, and I guess I'm one of the elves. I've written for the. Sorry, a giant moth has just flown into my living room. Apologies. And I've written a few posts for what was formerly the mental health. I guess now it would come on as the National Health Service. And yeah, I'm a PhD student at King's at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience. I'm coming to the very end of my thesis in psychosis and sort of neurocognition of psychosis, and yeah, I'm a big fan of science communication and research-based medicine.
Brilliant, thank you. And Ruth, finally over to you.
Hi, I'm Ruth Northway. I work at the University of South Wales. My background is in learning disability nursing, and I've done a couple of blogs for the Learning Disability Elf.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So we've got 5 contributors to the mental health and the learning disabilities elf. And in Chris's case, somebody who's contributed to lots of other elves in our little woodland as well. And we've got a chief blogger in Caroline on the commissioning elf. Myself and Douglas have that role as well. I do that for mental health, and Douglas does that for the diabetes elf. And Alex, you're our kind of rogue non-contributor so far, so thanks for joining us. And you've got the kind of evaluation hat on. So yeah, as Alex says, we've just signed an institutional agreement with the Oxford Health Foundation Trust. So they're subscribing to the National Health Service now, and all the staff of that trust can get access to the membership features. And as part of that relationship with Oxford, we're also running a randomised controlled trial. We're just planning that at the moment. So we're going to test the National Health Service as an intervention to see what impact it has on clinicians keeping up to date with research and using evidence in practice. So we thought we should put our money where our mouth is, and we're always banging on about more large-scale randomised controlled trials. So we're doing a step wedge RCT of the National Health Service. We think that's relatively unusual. Talking to the mental health developers we know of, there's 1 or 2 people building websites and apps that do that kind of evaluation, but on the whole, people don't, either because it takes too long, it costs too much money, or they don't want to find out that their product doesn't work. So hopefully we'll get some positive results from what we're doing, but we'll certainly be blogging a bit more about that in the near future, so you can find out more. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Douglas, and he's going to do a bit of a presentation now, so let me just share my screen again and bring up some more slides. So apologies for the Hawkwind effect for a couple of seconds.
We'll see how that goes, Andrea. I noticed earlier that it was showing up whoever was speaking, even though you were screen sharing. I suspect that's happening to everyone now, is it? So as I'm talking, you're seeing me.
Yeah.
What I will do is I will share my screen. I've got the same slides.
Okay.
I'm sharing my screen now, and then we've got the Hawkwind effect, and then we've got the slides. So, just very quickly, I think the reason why we're all here is because we're interested in making evidence accessible to people who need it in practice. We shouldn't need to rehearse the issues that have plagued efforts to translate research into practice for years. Although we did make this effort a couple of years ago, Caroline and I revisited the literature in a kind of narrative review to see what had changed about our understanding of how often people ask clinical questions that need evidence, how often do they actually manage to find an answer, and then are they finding the right answer? Are they finding good quality answers? Those studies had originally been done in the 1990s, and that was kind of about the time that I started getting involved in evidence-based healthcare. So we wanted to update all of that, and it was kind of done in the context of some work we were doing through the National Library for Health at that time. But we wrote up our findings and published it in the newsletter of the International Society for Evidence-Based Healthcare. What you're seeing on the page, sorry, on the screen now, is a very high-level summary of some of the key updates, key information that we uncovered. We found that about half of press releases of randomized trials contain spin, so contain adjustments to the facts to make it more appealing to the publisher, to make it more attractive to the reader. And these are randomized controlled trials, never mind other types of research. So there is clearly still a problem with the way that we communicate new evidence to professionals. When we look at press releases of trials, we found significant misrepresentation of the results. And often this is not down to the researchers, this might be down to a sub-editor who prepares that press release. So whether you're looking at published abstracts, published reports, or press releases, there's a problem with the way evidence is reported. And we came up, as a result of our review, a kind of very approximate heuristic estimate of the percentage of clinical questions that actually don't get a good quality answer. And that was in the range of about 58 to 87%. So this is questions asked by health professionals in the context of dealing with a patient that there may be evidence for, but they don't get it. So that's a serious failing. One of the reasons why there's such a wide range there, I think, is that studies that have actually explored this use lots of different techniques. And what they find is that if you ask a professional, you get a lower estimate than if you get a third-party observer to record what a person is doing. So if you take the kind of recall bias out of the equation, you end up with more questions going unanswered than if you ask the health professionals themselves. So this is an old problem, it's not a new one, but we thought we should try and bring it up to date with some of the new evidence in the white paper, just to kind of put into context about what we were trying to achieve with the National Health Service. And of course an obvious question is, once we've established an issue, well, why aren't we doing this already? Aren't there sources that provide answers to these questions? And what we've done in this slide is just kind of split into 3 different types of resource. So we've got what we've called meta-databases, so things like NHS Evidence, TRIP, that search lots of different sources. You can think of specific evidence databases such as the Cochrane Library that provide randomized trials and especially systematic reviews, good quality evidence in one database. And then you've got a kind of higher level evidence sources, things like UpToDate and Dynamed, that try to collate all the evidence and provide an answer to those questions. And I think one of the problems we have is that when we look at these sources, a lot of them do 1 or 2 things very well. So a systematic review will give you a really good assessment of the current state of the evidence around a specific question. But a systematic review might be hard to read, so it might not be user friendly because we've got to get, we've got to have the appraisal skills, we've got to have the access to the database, we've got to have the search skills to be able to find it. So our estimate of the current situation is that we don't really have a solution that gives a really good answer. Because when we look at perhaps the best solution is something like Dynamed, but these are expensive and and there's a bit of a time lag. They aren't necessarily current. So if there's a new study that comes out, it takes a while for it to be incorporated into the sort of high-level structure. When we look at things like TRIP is a good example. It's got lots of evidence-based content, and it picks up a range of different sources, but it's quite difficult to search. It's quite difficult to find your way around. So all of these resources perhaps don't tick all the boxes in terms of accessibility, usability, and reliability, which is what people really need if they're going to engage with the evidence. And we've published a white paper very recently which just updated this for the context of mental health, and we still see that there's a huge volume of randomized trials and systematic reviews, thousands of papers being published every year in mental health, and it's very difficult for people to access that evidence. And what we've done so far hasn't really solved the problem. To an extent, we've kind of, in one respect, we've tried to solve the problem of too much evidence by throwing more evidence at it, and throwing more databases at it, and so it's no wonder that this is an issue. And so I think there's clear evidence that there's still a problem with people not being able to get evidence. And there's obviously stories very often sort of trump what evidence says, unfortunately. But my favourite story about this is the GP whose kid goes to the same school as my daughter. They're in the same class. She asked me what I was doing, mentioned evidence-based healthcare. She said, "Oh, I don't have time for all that academic medicine stuff." So to her, evidence was something that was a way not to do with her everyday practice. So we still haven't managed to bridge that gap with the resources, which are, I mean, we don't want to denigrate the efforts that people have made. Systematic reviews are very important sources. TRIP's a brilliant resource. All these things are great, but they haven't quite given people the sense that they can connect to the evidence yet. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we still see so many of those clinical problems not being addressed with good quality evidence. So that kind of brings us up to what we were trying to do with the National Health Service. And I guess we didn't really sit down and say we need to design this from the bottom up. In some respects, I think the National Health Service came about because we started talking about evidence in a way that was accessible to people. It was about 4 years ago, pretty much exactly 4 years ago, that Andre and I decided to start doing a blog-based project about evidence. We had the idea that it was like, sort of, you've got your 5 a day for diet. Well, what about if you get 1 bit of evidence a day? Then over a year, you'll end up with 250 bits of evidence. Suddenly, you spend 2 minutes a day reading a blog. Over the course of a year, you're connecting to the evidence. And again, we didn't sit down and think that's the answer. We just started doing it, and it grew. So the people who are on this call just now were some of the first people to respond very positively to what we were doing. John Northfield started writing a blog about learning disabilities, and I think particularly he was a sort of trailblazer there because he recognised there was an issue in learning disabilities in just the dearth of high quality evidence and the difficulty in translating it into very complex situations. And the blog that he wrote really helped people to make that connection, and so Andre particularly then picked up that challenge for mental health. But I think it was really what made us think we were onto something was how popular the mental health was in the early days, how many followers. It very quickly grew, and it doubled every 6 months or so since we started doing it. And also, I should also very much pay tribute to all the bloggers who came on board who decided this is something that they're interested in, not as something to promote themselves, not as something to promote their research, but to try to get the research across to people in a friendly and engaging manner. So that's where we got to, and I just wonder, before we go on to look at how the product has developed, what comments or questions would you have on the call about that sort of back history? Is that something that resonates with you?
Well, I can say something.
Thanks, Chris.
Hiya. Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that attracted me is that in my role as a health economist, I'm often talking to people who are very good at the clinical side of things, but don't know much about my world, and I know often almost nothing about their world. So I've always had this challenge of understanding the clinical side of the research. So that was what brought me to the site as a reader, and then obviously over time you develop your skills at understanding and communicating these things in a way that if I can understand it, then everyone else can understand it. So I think I don't know if I was coming from a different angle to a lot of other people, but the way the site communicated the research was just really appealing to me, and I could relate to that a lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
For me, it's Caroline. I've been running a current awareness service for quite a few years on health management issues, but it's just been literally cutting and pasting references. So to have it's actually really difficult finding health policy evidence. So I think it's really great that we are having commissioning out to help decision makers make better informed decisions. It's so difficult actually finding the evidence in that area because it's clinical. You've got all the clinical databases, but with commissioning, it's kind of dotted in a lot of places you wouldn't usually thought of. And I've had a lot of help from some of the other elves who've we've just done the smoking one. There've been some other mental health commissioning papers. So it's just bringing it all together and having all that expertise, which I think is really, really invaluable for people who are working at the front line.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you. Well, I think what I'd like to do now is pass over to Andre, who's going to show how we've developed the system, and then we'll maybe get a chance to come back at the end just to finish off with some thoughts from other folk about the direction we're taking and what the challenges might be, and what the successes are that we can celebrate. But I'll pass over to Andre now, who's going to demo the spanking new home for all you wonderful woodland creatures.
Well, you can tell it's Friday, can't you? We're going forward with metaphors. Anybody that's read the Mental Health blog today has got some great meat feast pizza equals meta-analysis metaphors in it, so please do check that one out. Right, so I've had my microphone on mute for the last 20 minutes because it's 3:30 and all the school kids are coming home. I'm working from home today and my window's open, obviously. So apologies if you get hip-hop music and cussing in the streets during the presentation, if possible. There is a microphone mute button in Hangout. You can mouse over the video window, and there's a little way that you can mute your microphone if you do have similar issues. So hopefully this screen share will work this time. Gosh. Okay, so please let me know if you can see my screen, okay? You should be able to see 3 little elves.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
And yeah, so what I'm going to do is like a 15-minute talk through the new website. So this launched a couple of months ago, the National Elf Service, nationalelfservice.net. And what we're doing is we're moving all of our elves into this website over the next few months. So in May we launched with the Mental Elf, and then just a couple of weeks ago we added the Learning Disabilities Elf and the Social Care Elf to this website. And there's 8 more elves out there in the woodland covering topics from musculoskeletal health to dentistry, which we're going to be bringing in to this website over the next few months. So those have all been standalone websites, and the reason that we're bringing them all together is that we don't really feel that it's worth having them separately, because there's so many topics that people are interested in that are cross-cutting. So, you know, these 3 topics here, learning disabilities, mental health and social care, they really do overlap a lot, and a lot of people work in an area where all of the blogs on those different L's are going to be very relevant to them. So bringing everything into one website still means that you can say, I'm only really primarily interested in reading learning disabilities blogs. So you set a primary L when you register, and that's what this page is showing you. But then you can also get the other stuff as well. So if something on learning disabilities is published in the Dental Elf, for example, because it's talking about oral health of people with learning disabilities, then you get to see that as well. So hopefully bringing it together is really going to be helping people to sign up to not just the kind of population areas and main clinical areas of interest, but also to the specific things that they're particularly interested in. Pregnancy, for example, would be right cross-cutting across all the L's. Okay, so the new website looks quite similar to the old website. You've got a little elf in your top right-hand corner, and you can browse categories and find topics of interest. So I'm looking at the mental health at the moment, and I can browse to different mental health conditions or different populations, different treatments, etc. One of the things that you'll notice when you register for the mental health and you log in for the first time is you have this panel at the top of the page, and I'm just going to talk you through that during this presentation and show you some of the features. So the first thing to say is that all of the content, all of the blogs that we write, they've always been open access, they've always been free, and they will continue to be free. We don't have any plans to charge people for the blog content. We don't really think that would be appropriate. Because obviously the website gets used a lot by patients and carers and people who would never want to subscribe to the members features. But what we've done with the membership features is added in lots of ways in which you can keep up to date with the research and track your learning as you go along. And we've done that through what we're calling gamification features. So what we'd like to do with this website is incentivize people to learn about health research. And we think the best way to do that is to make it engaging and fun. So when you sign up to the National Health Service, you become an ELF novice. After a few hours of using the website, you do various things that get you points, and you graduate and you become an ELF apprentice. And then you gradually move through this game where everything that you do on the site, reading blogs, writing blogs, commenting on blogs, keeping personal reflective notes on your practice, it all gets you points, and those points relate to where you are in this particular level. So you can see on this page how many points you've got. I've got 2,000 points on this account that I'm looking at. You can see what you've got points for. So I've done various things on the site over the last few days that have given me points. You can see how you fit into all the other people in the woodland and how many points they've got if you're interested in that kind of competition. And you can also generate a CPD certificate, and this is probably the feature that's most useful for professionals. When we did our market research of this website, the message that we got right across the board, from dental assistants to psychiatrists, was the same. CPD is hard and somewhat annoying because every now and again, every couple of years, I get some assessor coming in and saying, right, what have you done? And I have to kind of put together this CPD file frantically to work out which conferences I went to and where I got points for, what online learning I've done, etc. And so what you can do with this system is just say, what have I done in the last year or the last 7 months in this case, and download a certificate that summarizes that information for you. Because everything in the website is tracked, everything that you do on the website, you can just create that as you need to. And it summarizes it for you in a nice little certificate that you can print off. Doesn't have to be one that's got elves on it. There's a plain text version as well, because we know that some CPD assessors aren't that keen on woodland guides. But basically, you can see this is a new account, so I haven't really done much. But I've set up some alerts, I've made some notes, I've read some blogs. I've spent 5 hours on the website, and so that relates to maybe 5 points for CPD. Depends on how your CPD works. So yeah, that's the kind of gamification side of what we're doing. Any questions about that? Any comments on that before we move on? Okay, so let me just come back to the home page. So we'll start looking at a blog, and I'll talk you through some of the features. I think most of you have either read or written blogs, so you'll be familiar with this kind of format that we have. Marcus Munafo wrote this blog earlier on this week, which I think is probably our most popular blog this week. This is an interesting one. Some research that points towards a link between smoking and schizophrenia, suggesting that smoking may be a causal factor with schizophrenia. And there's a few studies that have been published this year which point towards that. So Marcus was summarising that in this blog, specifically one case control study, but also referencing a couple of other recent pieces of research. So we summarised it in the usual style, mental health blog. You're all familiar with this, a declarative title, an introduction, bit of background, the methods of the research that we're summarising, and the results, nice and summarised. In this case, it shows a clear link and a kind of dose related for this particular topic. So he concluded, and he did his usual sort of limitations of the evidence and his own personal sort of summary, clinical commentary on this evidence. Now that's a pretty standard National Health Service summary, obviously with links to the information. So hopefully most people will get to this point in a blog, the bottom, having read it. And at this point, you are invited to share it and also to do a couple of extra things that you didn't used to see on the old site. So you can mark this blog as read, and if you do that, it will give you some points. So it will tell you you've learnt this now, and that will then be added to your particular record. And you can also create a personal note on this blog. So we'll just do that. So that opens up a separate tab. And you can see, so I can go back and look at the blog as I'm creating my note. And it gives the note the same title as the blog by default. You can edit that if you want to. This is really simple. Reflective practice notes are a core part of all professional CPD, and people already keep these sorts of notes. Sometimes they keep them on paper, sometimes in another sort of system. All we've done here is we've created a way that you can create your own note and link it to blogs on this website and discussions that take place on this website. So there's a discussion area for members, and it may be that you've been talking to other members of the National Health Service and you want to link your particular reflective practice note with that. So it's very simple functionality. We haven't really made this too complicated. You save your note, and that's just something that you can see in the system, and then you see it sitting alongside other notes that you've created over the last few weeks. So we've got lots of ideas about how we can develop this feature. We've done quite a bit of research looking at different professional groups, asking them about this feature. But what do you think about that kind of note-taking feature, and how would you like to see that developed? What could you add to that, do you think, to make it more useful for you?
Well, I definitely like the feature, how it's added, because I'm the one usually writing my own notes on scrap papers that I end up losing. I don't know how to improve it. I'll have to start using it first and see how I get along with that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask, with those notes, are you able to download them, print them?
Good point.
Not currently, Ruth, but I think that's Ruth. I can't see you, but it sounded like
it is.
Yeah,
I mean, that would be, I'm just thinking, like, coming from a nursing background, because revalidation is going to kick in, and, people having to keep sort of records there, which you can then share with other registrants. I was just thinking if you had something which you could print off, you know, alongside that CPD certificate, that'd be really helpful.
So just generate a PDF from the note and stick it in your file. Absolutely. Yeah, that's on our wish list at the moment, but it's good to have your confirmation. That would be useful.
Or just mail it to yourself as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we're looking at with the... Sorry?
Sorry, is it not working properly? I think tags would be useful on the notes.
Okay, so tagging notes in the same way that we tag blogs, so you could say this is about smoking and schizophrenia and case control study, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I was more thinking about people to, you know, just having a field there, and then you could, if you searched your notes, you could search the tags.
Yes, absolutely. So you can just generate your own tags based on what you'd like to tag it with.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Is that Lisa?
That's me, yeah,
yes,
sorry.
Thanks, no,
video's not working.
Yeah, no problem. How about sharing? Do people think that'd be useful? Sharing with colleagues, sharing with a kind of group, or more broadly with people in your team?
I think like a journal club, you know, sharing it in that way, sharing comments, maybe a bit slow, but I think it would be useful.
So you could have a group of members of the site that you share stuff with, you know, your local team, or so you can kind of control the privacy settings of that. That's quite a bit of work to add that, but do you think that would be a useful feature?
Well, you see, for me, I kind of see notes as the private version of comments, really. So if you're going to make it public, then I don't see why you wouldn't just leave a comment. But different people use it in different ways.
Yeah. I guess maybe it's something in between a public comment and a completely private note is something that you can control the sharing of.
I think there's something about the going public with your comments. I think that is difficult for quite a lot of people. A few years ago, we built an online appraisal tool for the AGREE instrument, you know, the guideline appraisal instrument, and there was an option to share publicly, and they had about 15,000 people registered on the system. About half of them had completed appraisals, and not a single one had shared their appraisal publicly. So I think there's a key point there, isn't there, about I can see how people might want to share it within a team, but maybe not publicly. But maybe this is something, it's about making the connections between the notes and a discussion group or something like that a bit more explicit.
Yeah, good point. Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks, everyone. Let's move on, just in case we run out of time. I'm loving the Woodland revamp hashtag, Lisa. Thanks for that. That's really good. Okay, so I'm going to show you the alerts feature next. I mean, obviously, one of the problems we've got, is a high-quality problem to have, is that we've now got thousands of blogs in this website, and so keeping up to date with the evidence that's coming out isn't just necessarily a case of having a look at the site every now and again. You might want to set up an alert to receive an email when something is published on a topic of your choice. And obviously that would work right across the whole National Health Service. So if you're interested in mental health, that isn't always going to appear on the mental health. You might get something about mental health on the commissioning ELF or the social care ELF or the learning disabilities ELF, as we've said. So our alert builder is a really simple way of creating a relatively complex Boolean search. We're information scientists, so we don't have a problem kind of creating complex searches on databases, but we know other people sometimes do. So we've created this drag and drop interface that allows you to build a search. So if you're interested in certain conditions, let's say we're interested in depression, in children, and let's say we're interested in high quality publication types. So I'm going to put systematic reviews and meta-analyses and randomized controlled trials in that box. So we're quickly building a search, and what it's doing at the top is it's running a search of the thousands of blogs on the site, and it's building our Boolean search with ands and ors and brackets in the right place. So you don't need to worry about any of that stuff. It does it for you. So you can see we've got 27 articles about depression in children, high quality evidence. You can choose the frequency of the alert that you get, and you can give it a name, if you can spell. And then you can save it on the site. And that will send you an email, not just for blogs, but also for any other content on that topic that's published on this site. So if a discussion starts up on young people with depression, if a campfire is scheduled on young people with depression, you'll get an email alerting you to that at the regularity that you set. You can go back and edit that if you want to, you can delete it, and you can view the results of that search just by clicking on the view button. That will bring up those 27 blogs that we were talking about before. So that's a really basic requirement of any website, the ability to set up an alert. But hopefully that will make it a little bit easier for you to keep up to date with the stuff that's interesting to you. What does everybody think of that?
So,
yeah.
Quick question. Will that search across all the blogs?
Yes, it will search across everything in the National Health Service website. So
that's really good.
Currently that's just mental health, learning disabilities, social care, but as the year goes on, more content's going to be added in. So next month, the musculoskeletal health and the dental health will be added into this website, and by the end of January next year, we'll have all of our existing ELVs as part of this site.
That's great. Okay.
I think this is probably one of the best and most useful features of the National Health Service, and it seems like it could be one of the main drivers of traffic to the website. But I think the search function is super easy, and it's a genius way of building the searches. But even so, people like things to happen in one click. So it seems to me like it'd be good if there was some way to kind of share searches. So if somebody was interested in studies of depression in children, they could literally go to the site, see that search, and join it. So I don't know, some way of kind of sharing your searches with other people.
Yeah, okay. So you could have kind of popular searches. You could follow the searches that other people are creating. Yeah, nice idea. And I guess for you, Chris, because we don't have an ELF economist. We don't, have an ELF that covers health economics.
Yeah.
Content. It's spread right across all of the ELFs. This is something that's particularly useful for somebody like yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it just makes it so much easier. I mean, at the minute, it's there's only 3 on there, but if there were 10 posts every day, it would get quite tricky to tease out what you wanted to read without having a search function like this and alerts. So yeah, it's going to be brilliant. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, great idea. I like that. Anybody else? Any comments? Any thoughts on how we can improve this? Okay, so let's move on. I'm not going to show you the other kind of interactive parts of the site. We're obviously in a campfire at the moment, so you kind of know what campfires are. And discussion groups is kind of fairly usual fare, online message boards. You can go in there, you can start a discussion topic, you can share it with people. Those are obviously focused on the membership of the website only, National Health Service members. There's a few hundred people that are already members of the site since we launched. But obviously that number will be growing over the coming months. You also have the option of commenting publicly on any of the blogs, and we think that's probably going to be the most popular way that you can discuss the evidence, because that will be with everyone. But you've got that facility to do both of those. What do people think about that? Do you see, obviously those are quite different, what would you find yourself using most, do you think? Does that make sense? Have I asked the right question? Do you understand what the question is? So I'm asking whether you would be more likely to comment publicly on a blog or start a discussion in a private discussion area with other members of this website, and what the pros and cons of those two approaches.
Well, I guess one of the things is, well, two things. Discussions are going to be better organised in the discussion group, so it'll be easier to follow than in the comments section. But then I would suspect that the discussion groups would be best for discussions of quite niche things, whereas the comments section might be more useful for the kind of broader points, and it doesn't really facilitate the nitty-gritty.
Is it something the chief bloggers could sort of monitor the comments pages, and then if there's something which could be a discussion, they could put it into the discussion forum?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done that in a couple of cases. Yeah, I think that would work.
Yeah, I think it needs. I mean, getting discussions going around a focused topic can be difficult because obviously on a blog post itself, people could be saying anything, anybody could be saying anything. But we still want to have that out in the open. And I think the point Chris made at the start is really important about that's how people connect with the writers, connect with the researchers, they connect with the professionals, and also the patients. And that's been one of the most exciting things, is that actual, real-life, proper discussion amongst those three stakeholders. And that's happening without a login. So you can have that chat without, and you can benefit from that without having to sign up. I think the interesting thing will be how we push further, more detailed discussions into discussion groups. And my feeling is that might be something that emerges as a sort of journal club type setting, or there might be an invited group of people that join a particular discussion group, or as you said, there might be key issues that come out of specific blogs that suggest we need a. So I mean, the smoking one is a great example. The smoking and mental health would be a really good topic to have a discussion thread, because we can bring in lots of different studies, but there are a lot of attitudes obviously around. Some people think, well, people with severe mental health problems need to self-medicate with smoking, and that is being challenged by a lot of the evidence that's come out, and it has really clear implications for practice. So that's the sort of thing that might be better as a focused, moderated discussion in a discussion group.
That's interesting. I think what we're going to do is test out all these different places to talk. Obviously, the most conversation that we have is on Twitter. And I don't think that will change. I think it will be continuously, the most popular place. And the blog comments are also quite popular on some blogs. I imagine as we kind of become more and more private in the discussion, it will become more niche and less frequent. But it'll be interesting to see how that works out over time.
Just a tangential point about comments and discussions in general is that a lot of websites and blogs have a Reddit-style kind of upvoting system, so that the top comments, the comments that get the most whatever likes or retweets, kind of float up to the top, so that you don't have to scroll down too far to find the more in-depth or more eloquently put comments. Is there scope for that kind of feature? Or?
Absolutely, it's something we considered when we built the site. We decided against it in the end. We thought we'd see how popular the private discussions were before we implemented that kind of feature, because this is the sort of feature that works well if you've got a really popular discussion area, but if there's not much going on, then it's sort of superfluous. Yeah, I think we'd do it in a Woodland way. We'd have some kind of, elf thumbs up going on or something, but yeah, I can see that would be a useful feature potentially. Works well on busy sites. Okay, I just wanted to get your views on the gamification. Sorry, horrible word. I've used it twice. But the kind of elf lineup. There are female elves as well, by the way. So if you register on the site as a woman, you will not see these bearded boys. You will see female elves. If you are a woman and you see these men, then go into profile and change your setting to female, and you'll see some lovely female elves instead. I mean, what do you think about this? I won't say what do you think about this. How does this kind of strike you as an approach? Yeah.
I like it. I'm used to it from lots of different websites that use a similar strategy for you to keep track of how much you actually interacted with a certain website. So yeah, it's nice to see that after a while you upgrade it because of your time that you invested in it. And it's visually nice, so.
It has evidence in its favour, doesn't it? Gamification to facilitate learning and so on. So
Yes, absolutely. Not that much in the health world. I mean, it's gaining a bit more in the health world. But when we were thinking about this, we were looking at language learning websites as the best example. That use a lot of these gaming techniques to incentivize people to come back and to learn more.
I think that it's going to be a bit of a Marmite. People are going to love it or hate it.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, you could potentially give people the option not to see the elves if you were really worried about it, but I don't think it's going to stop people using the service, particularly.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've tested. I think you're right, Alex. I think that we've tested it, and the people that, you know, stop it. This is silly. What are you showing me this for? You know, I'm just interested in the evidence. Show me the evidence. But actually, when you show them that they're on the league table, and Professor Piehead in Glasgow is also on the league table, and he's higher there, then suddenly they're interested as well. So I think there is there's an internal competition that people have that incentivizes them. You know, I want to get to the next level. I want to learn more. I want to create more. I want to write more blogs. And there's this kind of sometimes external competitive thing that people have. Yeah, it's interesting. It's complicated, I think.
I don't think it's something to get too hung up about, though, and too worried about. Yeah.
I think generally one of the things we found, it's similar, as you said, if people object to this, they object to the elf.
Yeah.
I think what we found when we first did our early research was that the people who object to the elf are people who kind of don't need this because they're already immersed in research. That kind of tended to be, and also the people who kind of objected to the elf concept, they were very small, and a surprisingly small in number. And you know, that's one of the things that made us think, you know, actually, there's something about putting a nice little friendly face on the evidence that actually helps people for some reason. And gamification is the same. As Raf was saying, you know, there's evidence about these things as incentives to get people to engage more. So yeah, why not? And yeah. We're always very keen with our woodland metaphors, so we can have a woodland league table. Why not?
So we've had a comment on Twitter from Janet Thomas. Thanks, Janet, who said that she would like to be able to save her notes in other CPD portfolios, such as PedalPad. So we'll certainly look into that. I think plugging into existing CPD systems is something that we're very keen on doing, and we're starting to talk to some of the professional membership organisations about how we could work the National Health Service into the way they do their CPD for their members. So that's certainly something that we're looking at in the future. Okay, I'm going to turn off my screen now and just come back so we can finish by looking at each other. So yeah, it's nearly 4 o'clock, so that's flown by. I think everyone has spoken, so it's great that you've all been vocal and involved. We wanted to sort of finish off just by asking you kind of what got you first involved, I suppose, in the National Health Service. I know all of you are, or most of you are contributors to the National Health Service, and the usual story is that somebody starts reading the blog, and then they after a while think, oh, I could do this, and then they contact us, and then before you know it, they're regular bloggers. And in a sense, that's fantastic for us. That's brilliant news, because that's kind of what the whole project's about. You know, you're the sort of super users at the top who are actually writing the stuff. So regularly reading and critically appraising and summarising evidence for other people. We would hope that other members of the site and other users of the site could also work up that ladder. And it might be that they start doing that through, you know, tweet chats or campfires or other sort of ways of getting involved. But have you got anything that you can share about how you first got involved in the site and what you're doing with it now that might kind of encourage other people to follow the same path?
Well, for me, it's Caroline. I've known you and Doug for years and just love the work you're doing. But for me, writing has never really been my forte, and writing up critical appraisal, so it was a great opportunity for me to develop professionally, improve my skills on writing, and this is an ideal way for doing it because it improved my knowledge as well as doing something useful for other people.
Brilliant. Thank you, Caroline. Well, your writing's brilliant. So.
Oh, thank you.
I think for me, what got me into writing for it, apart from the getting really interested by reading all the blogs and then wanting to contribute, is also because I find that when I'm reading, I tend to only focus on those topics that are very close to my area of interest, whereas with writing, you actually get the chance to delve a little bit further, and by doing a little bit of extra research around the article that you're reading, it gives, it's a much wider learning activity than just reading a blog. So it's very, it widens my area of interest and my knowledge. I really like it.
Yeah, excellent. That's great to hear. I think that's probably the most common reason that people become bloggers, because they want to be challenged by other stuff.
Yeah.
I guess the way that we usually do that with the ELF blogs is that we ask people what they're interested in, and then we send them papers on a regular basis on those topics, and sometimes challenging them a little bit to look at topics that maybe aren't their core areas of interest. So in a sense, we kind of orchestrate that a little bit as chief bloggers, and sometimes I give papers to people that I know will vehemently disagree with the research and the findings of the research, because that is a really interesting way of getting discussion and debate going. It's kind of, I think, how these campfires might work in future, not as kind of traditional bun fight debates, but maybe as ways of kind of bringing together people with opposing views, talking about it in a warm, friendly, woodland way. So we'll see how that works. What about everybody else?
Well, I know the appeal for me was that, in academia you might write a paper and it might take a while to get published, and not many people are necessarily going to read it, certainly not the general public, unless you do some kind of outreach event or something. And so this is a way of getting something out quite quickly. It's short, it's accessible, people see it and respond to it, so it's a lot more immediate. You can actually see the impact of what you're talking about and so on. Yeah, absolutely. The feedback you get is much quicker, and it's probably from a more diverse group than you would get if you publish through traditional methods. I think that's when it's been really exciting. The schizophrenia and smoking blog that we showed you earlier that Douglas was talking about, that's a great example. Whenever you blog about that topic, you immediately have a day on Twitter saying, oh, smoking schizophrenia. But it's a really interesting discussion because it's clinicians and researchers of opposing views, and service users and carers and people that work in hospitals and people that have to enforce no smoking bans and all that kind of stuff. So it's a much richer discussion that you would get perhaps through more traditional means.
Mm-hmm. I think for me it was about, I was asked to if I would sort of contribute a blog, but I think having sort of looked at them and read some of the others, for me it's really about trying to get that information out to as wide a range of people as possible. I mean, clinicians who are really busy and who maybe only have limited access, but also families and carers who perhaps traditionally wouldn't get access to some of that information.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important that the blogs that we write are kept in the public domain and that those people can continue to read them. Yeah, for sure. Fantastic. All right, well, we're out of time. It's just past 4 o'clock, so let's leave it there.
Okay,
Thanks very much for joining us, everyone. Much appreciated. I hope that's been a fun experience. I hope that's been helpful. We're going to be announcing our campfire schedule in the next few days, so check out the website to see what else is coming up. And yeah, look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thanks, Andre.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks. Great.
Thank you, everyone, for all your helpful input.